Let me start the recording. Let's start with the event with the opening remark. I would like to give floor to Mr. Alexan Baymenov, Chairman of the Steering Committee of Astana Civil Service Hub.
Thank you, Amanjul. Thank you for joining us today, dear esteemed participants. First of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to our long-lasting partners from the OECD, Ms. Barbara UBALDI, and the World Bank, Mr. João VASCONCELOS and Mr. Constantin RUSU. We deeply appreciate our partnership and constant readiness to share expertise and knowledge on artificial intelligence. Since the very inception, the Astana Civil Service Hub has served as a multilateral platform that fosters partnerships through a variety of capacity building and research activities with a flexible and demand-driven agenda. In line with this agenda, one of our key instruments is a needs assessment survey conducted biannually to discern priority areas for cooperation in civil service development and the public service delivery among hubs participating countries. Most recently, we conducted a survey on empowering AI for emerging nations, which was presented at the World Government Summit. It has pointed out several critical needs, and I'd like to highlight some of them. First, the respondents emphasized the imperative for enhanced national and international legislation. Although some certain steps being taken towards developing AI strategies in the countries of our region, there is still no overarching legal framework regulating AI development, deployment, and use. Second, fostering a culture of continuous learning and developing civil service capacity is paramount for remaining at the forefront and maximizing the benefits of artificial intelligence. Next, while AI development is an irreversible process, building strong ethical frameworks and fostering public trust in AI become critical concerns. Considering the need for swift AI solutions, it's vital to always prioritize the rights and freedoms of citizens and transparency. As the experience of mankind shows, the possession of new technologies calls for a new level of responsibility, as exemplified by the case of nuclear technology. On one hand, it shouldn't be demonized, but on the other hand, it shouldn't be disregarded. Moreover, survey respondents emphasized two key points highlighting the significance and challenges of cooperation modalities. First, in AI development, evaluating progress through benchmarking is crucial, given its complexity and absence of universal set of benchmarks. Recognized international indices should re-evaluate the weighing of AI-related components within the broader context of digital development, aligning with AI's changing role in digital government. Second, countries in our region acknowledge the necessity of fostering active collaboration among researchers, developers, business, and government agencies. Indeed, encouraging partnerships at all levels and sharing knowledge both locally and internationally can accelerate progress and enable each party to find best fit solutions for their own settings. Given the above and inevitable shift towards AI approaches and disruptive technologies, it's crucial to unite collective efforts. As you know, the Hub has launched 3 peer-to-peer learning alliances focusing on advancing public service delivery, e-government, and government transformation. These alliances were pioneered based on the Effective Institutions Platforms methodology. Today, we would like to initiate a series of online workshops on AI and new technology by involving our practitioners and experts from these peer-to-peer learning alliances to share best practice and identify common paths for the effective use of the AI in governance. I believe this initiative will lay the foundation for us to launch a new alliance in AI in the near future. Dear colleagues, in conclusion, I'd like to thank our distinguished speakers and long-standing institutional partners from over 10 countries who have joined us for this workshop. Let's make this gathering a milestone in our journey towards harnessing AI for better governance and brighter future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alikhan Baymenov. Thank you for our participants for joining us today. Before proceeding to the first speaker, I would like to ask you switch on the cameras so we can make the group photo, and my colleague will make some photos. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
It's so nice to see all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Now, let's move to the first speaker. I like to give the floor to the first presenter, Ms. Barbara UBALDI, Head of Digital Government and Data Unit at the OECD.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'll start sharing my screen, and you will let me know if that works correctly.
Yes, it works. We see it.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for having asked us to join this very important conversation. At the OECD, the work on AI in the public sector that we call now Governing with AI started a few years ago. For those of you who are not super familiar with the OECD basically conducts policy analysis in member and non-member countries with the purpose of identifying, like Mr. Alikhan said, common trends, common practices, common challenges, to see if there are ways to learn from each other, and to see if some of the common challenges can be addressed using some common, building on some common experience, with the purpose of influencing how policies and initiatives are designed, and therefore how technology and data are being used to deliver better value to our citizens and our economies. So in that sense, clearly, the use of AI in the public sector, which now it's something that we all pay a lot of attention to, it's not a novelty. We started working on it in 2019 to better understand what was the environment within public sectors that would enable public administrations to use this technology, again, to conduct internal operations in a more efficient and transparent way, but also to deliver better value. So the idea has been across time to really try to understand the role of governments, not only as regulators of the use of artificial intelligence, but also as users of artificial intelligence, and in some cases also as developers. What we realize is that there has been a lot of emphasis on the use of AI by the private sector. Clearly, ChatGPT has been has worked as a big booster of the conversation, but there are specific concerns and there are specific benefits that the public sectors can obtain by creating an environment that secures a trustworthy and ethical use of artificial intelligence by public sectors. So for us, this is a journey that continues, but it really started in 2019 when working with the representatives of the 38 member countries, plus a high number of non-member countries represented by delegates responsible for digital government in their administrations. We started to try to understand since the early stages, what were the key questions that they had, what were the key benefits they were trying to obtain by using artificial intelligence, and what were some of the challenges that they were starting encountering, with the idea of, again, learning from each other and identify some of the early actions that governments were taking to address these challenges and get the most value out of it. In the meanwhile, what has been happening, it's also been that in the OECD, more broadly, a recommendation, and recommendations that the OECD are normative instruments, soft laws, that include a number of actions that all member countries agree to be key actions to be taken in a specific domain. So in the meanwhile, the OECD has adopted a recommendation on artificial intelligence, which goes beyond the public sector, but really emphasizes the need to have the enablers in place to make sure that the use of artificial intelligence is ethical and is trustworthy. So this to say that in the past few years, I think there has been a growing attention, not only to the technology as such, but to the use of a technology that somehow respects rights and delivers value broadly. And for us, that's been the main framework of reference as we try to dig a bit more on the public sector. So what have we done specifically in the past, I would say 12 months, so since January 20, a bit more, in the past 16 months, since January 2023, we again have started increasing the number of use cases that we've been collecting to try to understand how can we look at the empirical experience of governments, so going beyond the idea of principles, going beyond the idea of concept, going beyond frameworks. We had an empirical approach to look at concrete application of the use of AI across public sectors, again, to start trying understanding the situation for governments as I said, also developers, users, and in some cases, financiers of artificial intelligence systems. So we started to map the concrete practices to understand what were the main purposes and what were the main challenges and risks that government were encountering. So what's really interesting is that across these use cases that we've been collecting in OECD member countries and beyond, what we saw is that the use of artificial intelligence, it's very consistently applied to specific tasks across public sectors, for example, for recognition, event detection, forecasting, to personalize services, to improve the interaction with the users of public services, to optimize how policy goals are achieved. And these are primarily the number of tasks where public sector institutions have been concentrating the use of artificial intelligence. There have been 4 core functions where the AI is being used for internal operations, for policy making, for service design and delivery, and for external and internal oversight. And when we try to understand what was the impact for the benefits that governments are trying to achieve, it seems that productivity intended as higher efficiency and effectiveness of the functions that I mentioned is one of the benefits that is targeted. Responsiveness in terms of policies achieving the goals expected, but also responsiveness of public sectors, public services, in line with the needs of the recipients of the services, and strengthening accountability. So it's interesting to see that while in terms of use cases, the critical mass of use of AI. Yeah.
I'm sorry for interruption. Your presentation is not moving.
Ah, that's weird. So what slide do you see? Still the first one?
Yeah, still the first one.
It's good that you told me. It's moving for me. So I don't know if you have it. Would you like to project it yourself to see if it works? Because in my case, it says that it's moving.
Okay, I will project it, but tell me which slide to open.
Yeah, so I was at slide 12. So I will stop sharing my screen.
So do you see it now?
Yes, I do. Thank you. And it was a slide 12. Thanks. So perhaps just to recap that these are the tasks. And so when looking at the use cases that we collected across OECD member countries and beyond, we saw that there were primarily the tasks that you see in the first column, which were tasks where AI is more frequently being applied. In the second column, you see the four key government functions where AI is being applied, and in the last column on the right, you see the main benefits in terms of impact the governments expect to achieve when using AI in those functions and across those tasks. Thanks. You can go to the next slide. So it's interesting to see that if we look at some of the concrete examples that we see, for example, in terms of improving operational efficiency, very interestingly, there have been in the Queensland government, there has been the use of artificial intelligence to try to make internal operations more efficient, but the same, like in the case of Colombia, for example, the Colombian Family Welfare Institute has been utilizing AI to provide services in a more accountable and in a more efficient way. In terms, the Austrian digitalization agency responsible for the government has been using AI to increase, for example, the quality of the public services that they provide. Next slide, please. Same, you see the examples on the slide, which point to how AI is being used to strengthen the responsiveness to the city, to the provision of the public services, or also the intention has also been, for example, to try to make sure that the AI would be utilized to better understand the journey of the users in utilizing a public service. So it's very interesting to see how across countries, not only AI has been used to increase the internal efficiency in providing a public service, but the intention has also been the use of AI to try to understand what is the experience of the journey of a user. And we hear so much, it's not a novelty across the European Union, but outside of the European Union, we hear so much talking about life events now. So it's interesting to see how AI is being used also to try to understand what the experience of a user in doing a journey of experiencing a service in a particular moment of his or her life. And then when it comes to, for example, the case of Japan, AI is being used also, in the case of Korea, AI is being used to try to design effective policies in situation of emergency. So the idea has been to use AI to anticipate some of the possible situation or scenarios in a context of infective diseases in the future. So the idea is learning from the recent experience with the COVID-19 pandemic to try to understand how eventually would a similar scenario, what kind of challenges would a similar scenario pose. And in the case of Brazil, AI has been used to improve external oversight. So the idea is that there's a number of cases of use of AI across the public sector that is increasing. However, it's very interesting to see how the critical mass of examples across the public sector is not as high as one would think. And that's why we think that in our exercise, what we've tried to learn through these experiences to see if there are some commonalities, some common challenges, some common trends, some common actions that are being taken, as we hope the number of cases across the public sector will increase, because again, we're talking so much about it, but in terms of practice, we see that there is not as a high application as one would expect. Next slide, please. And next one as well. Thank you. So the idea, as I said, through this analysis and the analysis of these use cases, the idea has been, first of all, to start asking countries what are the policy issues that they have been encountering in terms of challenges that they've been dealing with as they try to increase the use of AI in the public sector. So first of all, it seems that there are shared challenges with securing the political support from decision makers to keep investing on AI in the public sector, but there's also a challenge to secure the support of the public in sustaining or entrusting the capacity of governments to use AI responsibly to deliver better value. There has been also a challenge to anticipate and manage risks. So clearly, like I said at the beginning of my presentation, we tend to think that we can assimilate or we can consider as similar the challenges that governments and private sectors encounter when using AI. That's not exactly the case. When we think about the use of AI in the public sector, some of the limited trust from the public comes in relation to the worries of the government to be capable, for example, to secure data privacy, when using AI to secure that the decisions coming out of the use of artificial intelligence are not biased, they don't create new bias, or they don't reinforce bias. And also in terms of transparency, therefore, in terms of capacity of governments to be able to share with the public how, for example, what algorithm is being used, how the algorithm is being used, showing the data that is being used to inform the algorithm, to demonstrate that the data is, for example, inclusive and comprehensively covers the needs potentially of all segments of the population, and the explainability of the algorithm are some of the concerns, and therefore some of the potential risks in terms of data breaches, in terms of biased decisions, in terms of lack of transparency, which governments are dealing with at the moment. Governments also identify as a policy issue that intended as a challenge that they're dealing with the fact that right now most of the cases are experimental, and very few cases are actually solutions that can be scaled up, that have been reused, for example, across the public sector, and therefore are sustainable in the long run. And last but not least, governments identify as a policy issue the capacity to effectively be able to monitor the impact of the use of AI across the public sector. So there's a lot of emphasis on the benefits that governments expect to obtain by using AI, but at the moment, there's no strong capacity in being able to actually monitor the impact and measure the achievement of the benefits. Next slide, please. And to address these policy issues, governments have started taking some actions that we consider policy actions that can be looked at as options, as the public sector in other governments increasingly uses AI. For example, governments have started adopting strategies that are specifically targeting the public sector when it comes to the use of AI. Many governments have strategies for AI that cover the whole digital economy spectrum, but very few have targeted strategies for AI, while for AI use in the public sector, while that has seemingly a potential big impact in helping government address some of the challenges that I mentioned. For example, in terms of managing risks, mitigating risks, or in terms of obtaining the political support or the support across the public administration more broadly, or also ensuring a coherent use of AI across the public sector. Governments have also tried to strengthen their data governance. Clearly, we all know that some of the risks that I mentioned before are very much linked to the data availability, and the availability of high quality data. And in that sense, by strengthening the data governance, governments have tried to tackle that issue. Governments have also tried to not only come up with legislations or regulations. I think not only the EU AI Act, but also the executive order in the United States is a clear example of how governments have tried to take the regulatory aspect very seriously to address some of the challenges that I mentioned. But at the same time, they also come up with soft policy tools like ethical guidance, support a responsible use of AI across the public sector, like ethical frameworks for AI across the public sector are becoming a tool that is expected to create some sort of standard across the public sector for ensuring an ethical and responsible use. Governments have strengthened the establishment of what we call the digital public infrastructure, going beyond the understanding or the thinking of the underlying, for example, availability of data as a separate element from AI. But for example, the idea of establishing data sharing solutions that facilitate the access and reuse of data across the public sector to support, for example, the scalability of AI solution has been a big priority that has been used also to address the need to have the right capacities across the public sector, but also the possibility of establishing partnerships with actors across the public sector, but also from outside of the public sector in the broad ecosystem, like, for example, startups that become key actors with whom to engage when trying to experiment the use of AI inside of the public sector. And last but not least, as I said, a big challenge is the capacity to monitor the impact of the use of AI across the public sector to foster trust. And some countries like in the case of Canada and the algorithm impact assessment that they've been developed as the purpose to try to advance this capacity in being able to monitor the results and eventually also discontinue some of the practices if they see that they are not achieving the expected benefits. Next slide, please. And voila, thank you. So based on what I just described, we developed a framework that we call a policy framework for the use of AI across the public sector, which has the purpose, first of all, to building on this knowledge, to try to structure a little bit the understanding around the type of enablers that governments can put in place to address some of the policy issues that I just mentioned, some of the guardrails that can be put in place to eventually anticipate, manage, or mitigate the potential risks, and 3, the level of engagements that governments should target when they think about the actors they think to work with to be able to create enabling environment and address some of the risks, because we are aware that there are different levels of collaboration that need to happen inside of the public sector and outside. Can you go to the next slide, please? So when we look at the actors that government should be engaging with, first of all, inside of the public administration, as I said, when we talk about coherent use of AI in an ethical manner across the public sector, first of all, it's extremely important to remember that even if there is a single institution that is expected to coordinate or steer a responsible use of AI, it's essential to establish partnerships and to actually work across policy domains. So the idea has been to understand what kind of mechanisms from an institutional point of view can be put in place to make sure that there's a consistent way of using AI or understanding what is needed to use AI ethically across the public sector, but also the collaboration needs to happen across levels of government, because in many cases, when AI is used, for example, to design and deliver better services, we do know that services are delivered either in sectors, I'm thinking about social benefits, therefore under the responsibility of ministries responsible for delivering social benefits, or they are provided at the local level. There's a broader ecosystem. I mentioned, for example, the work with the startups, with the private sector, that needs to be taken into consideration when establishing the enabling environment that is conducive for an ethical use of AI. And last but not least, there's the global scenario, not only that's pretty obvious for countries in the European Union, but if we think about the UNESCO AI recommendation, if we think about the resolution of the UN more recently adopted, clearly there's an environment, there's a scenario, there's a context that goes very much beyond the national borders. Can you go to the next slide, please? When we think about the enablers, first of all, we talk about it in our framework in terms of governance. So what is the type of the type of standards, common standards, like I mentioned, for example, the ethical frameworks that need to be in place to make sure that the use of AI is consistently done in an ethical manner across the public sector, the legal framework that needs to be put in place to support, like to set the boundaries that somehow clarify and support an ethical use, the type of governance model the governments are putting in place. We know that more and more governments are establishing, for example, agencies that are responsible, or specific institutions or divisions or departments that are responsible for a coherent use of AI. But the question is, how can that agency play a role that is not only the role of a regulator, making sure that if a law exists, it is enforced, it is respected, but it actually supports the creation of a culture that is enabling a responsible use of AI across the public sector. That means, for example, in terms of governance, creating some cross-functional teams. Teams that support a responsible use of AI can not only include people who are AI specialists, for example, but they need to have a comprehensive set of skills around the responsible use of data, for example, people who know about the business case, about the specificities of the business mandate operations of a specific institution. So the idea is that the governance needs to take into consideration the type of mixed set of profiles that need to be around the table. And last but not least, risk management frameworks, which not only identify the risks, how to eventually avoid them, how to mitigate them, or how to manage them in case they happen. In terms of capabilities, it is becoming more and more evident that the skills that need to be available, like I said, are not only related to the use of AI, for example. In few cases, governments are trying to establish a small team of developers when they decide that there's a business case for the development to be happening inside of the public sector. Those are very few cases still. But more and more governments understand that they need to, for example, have skilled people who are capable to negotiate with private sector providers if a government decides to still procure systems developed by the private sector. So the idea is really to avoid, in this case, even more importantly than before, when it comes to technology, avoid purchasing or procuring systems which are not in line with the needs of the government, but also which do not respect a set of values that governments want to be respected, to make sure that the AI is used in an ethical manner. And last but not least, the creation of collaborations and partnerships requires, for example, the understanding of the role the different actors play when it comes to the responsible use of AI. Those collaborations and partnerships need to be somehow also enabling the achievement of the goals that are set, for example, in the broad strategy for AI in the public sector. And the establishment of those partnerships can also help dealing with issues on intellectual property, or that basically are strengthening the capacity of the government to make sure that AI is used, for example, in a responsible manner in relation to the predictions that are made when using AI. So the whole idea is that the enablers need to think about the tools that need to be in place, not only from a technical point of view, but when we look about the core government actions that need to be taken to make sure that AI is brought into the public sector, procured or developed, is applied and is used in a responsible manner. Next, please. And the last element, pillar of our wheel, is focusing on the guardrails. The guardrails intended as the safeguards the governments are putting in place in case the risks, to anticipate or mitigate, or again, manage the risks in case the risks become a reality. So if we think about the enabling environment, the guardrails somehow complement the enabling environment, and they reinforce the importance of some of the tools in the enabling environment. For example, the adoption of common standards to secure an ethical understanding and use of AI across the public sector, which again needs to be complemented with the understanding of what it means to use data, for example, ethically across the public sector, and even more so how that impacts the decisions taken by AI systems when it comes to the public sector, because as we know, the impact on person's life can be can be really powerful if a system decides who deserves to access a social benefit, who deserves to, or what kind of taxes I need to pay, for example, or if somebody should go in jail or not. So the idea is really to have common standards in understanding what it means to use ethically AI and to use ethically AI. The regulatory framework, as I mentioned, is seen more and more as a tool to support a responsible and ethical use of AI now across all EU member countries. That means, for example, understanding what it means, creating an environment which is mature to be able to enforce the EU AI Act, enforcement mechanisms, as I said, to make sure that if laws exist, these laws are respected. And more and more governments are establishing the oversight monitoring bodies, like agencies which have the purpose to make sure that not only regulations are respected, but also that soft tools are actually adopted and implemented across the public sector by civil servants. Next slide, please. Next, and here I come to the end of my presentation, but I really want to emphasize a lot the point around talent and skills. I mentioned already in previous slides how having the right people in the public sector to support an ethical and trustworthy use of AI is essential. As I said, I've been working on digital government for over 25 years, and it's a recurrent conversation, the one that concerns the type of people that we need to have in the house to be able to use technology. In this case, it's really a complex issue, even more than before, when it comes to the understanding, first of all, and the mapping of the needs in terms of skills and talent that need to be around the table. Certainly, there's a lot of conversation around skilling, reskilling, and upskilling, but it's true that in many instances, it's not about training people who are inside of the public sector, because when it comes to AI, as I said, it seems that still the trend is for governments to actually procure the systems from the outside. So the skills that need to be available are much more around the capacity to understand how AI and if AI can enable the public sector to conduct the work in a more efficient, transparent, and accountable manner. So it's really about having around the table the people who can understand how the needs for an institution can be better matched or satisfied by using AI. It's about having people who are capable to understand what it means to use AI responsibly. It's about having people, as I said before, who are capable to use data in a responsible manner. And what's really interesting is that there's a high percentage, as you see on the screen, of public sectors that are understanding more and more the need to think about skills in a new way to be able to support a trustworthy use of AI. Next slide, please. That means also understanding the cultural environment and need to be created because in many instances, one of the concerns is like, okay, we are not capable to actually attract the people that we need, and we're not able to retain the people that we need. And a key issue is salary, because in the public sector, we cannot pay people as much as the private sector does. And clearly there's a high demand of AI specialists in the whole ecosystem at the moment. Well, governments are realizing that it's not only about that, it's having a culture that provides on one side the opportunity for these people to operate, but also creating an environment that, like we've been saying for many years in relation to public sector innovation, supports experimentation, supports failure, supports testing, and therefore is the creation of a digital mindset that is available also across the leaders who understand that you need to have the people around the table who can help you also in the soft aspects that support a responsible use of AI. So it's really about strengthening some of those skills and talent that have been in place to support the transition towards digital government, which is focusing much more on the transformation that we want to achieve by using technology rather than on the technology as such. So it's really strengthening the administrative capacity that exists inside of the public sector to support the use of AI. And we've done a large project with Italy, in this case, within the institution that is responsible for providing social benefits. And the whole point has been, okay, are we capable even to identify the data that we need to be able to see who's the potential beneficiary entitled to receive the benefits that we are providing? And the answer is that in many cases, the data was not even available to begin with. So again, I think there's a growing understanding of asking questions around the skills that are needed, which is much more complex than it used to be in the previous eras of the digital evolution of the public sector. Next slide, please. So to conclude, we know that there are not single answers. I know that João from the World Bank is coming next, and the World Bank is one of the key actors together with other actors like the UN, different UN bodies, both at the Secretariat in New York, but also the UNESCO, with which we are working at the moment to try to join forces, because I think that we all are coming to the same conclusions in terms of challenges and needs from governments, and more than ever, these are shared challenges. Meaning, I think the conversation is very equal between countries with different levels of technological development, because the challenges across the public sector that are being experienced are very similar, and therefore we really look forward to keep joining efforts and forces to be able to help governments in a consistent manner across borders and across the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barbara UBALDI. Thank you for your presentation. Now let's move to our next presenter. I would like to invite Mr. João VASCONCELOS and Constantin RUSU, Senior Governance Specialist from the World Bank Group.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon to most of you. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me thank the invitation done by our global partners from the Astana Civil Service Hub. So a special thanks to Mr. Baimanov, but also to the team of the Astana Civil Service Hub. So Amanzol, Diana, always a pleasure to be here with you. A pleasure also to share a panel with Barbara from the OECD. And as mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration underway that we'd like to leverage. So So let me share here quickly the presentation that my colleague Constantin and I will do. And the objective here, it's really to give you an overview about the work that the World Bank is doing in this area. Not only the analytical work that we produce, but also based on the experience that we have working directly with countries all over the world and implementing projects in the field on this, namely with countries from Eastern Europe, Central Asia. So several of them I can see here around the table. So we all know, and it has been underlined, that given the fast pace of digital transformation underway, public governance has an absolutely central role. I think we are all beyond, let's say, the huge optimism that probably surrounded the IT and the digital sector several years ago. Today, most governments look at the digital transition with more maturity, trying to understand not only the benefits that come from there, but also several challenges that need to be tackled. And the role of government is central there. And one of the things that we always repeat, namely here when interacting with in previous events with the Astana Civil Service Hub, is when we try to address the topic of technology and policies for the development of digital transformation in the public sector, it's not really about technology. So it's not really about the bits and bytes, because when you try, and based on our experience, when you try to address these topics, only assuming that that the technology is the core issue, and you limit your policies to technology levels, probably you are missing the biggest part that is required here. And namely, trying to understand that when you develop this kind of digital transition policies, you need to mostly rely on on the process, on the culture that is underway, on the institutional setting that surrounds this policy. So this is not something that can be solved only by from this technological perspective. It's a governance perspective that is needed here. And like we had the opportunity to share previously, also around 1 year ago, change management is it's absolutely fundamental when addressing this transition in the public sector. And when specifically on the case of AI, when we think about disruptive technologies in this area, of course, we need to, and the public sector need to always remind himself or herself that citizens need to be put really at the center of this policy. So the idea is not to develop or to embrace AI policies because it's interesting, because it's cool, because you need as a country to be at the forefront of it, but thinking from the perspective of the citizen on how addressing these policies in a correct way can benefit different persons, can benefit the citizens, can benefit the companies, etc. And this is the big rationale that you need to have. And mostly, and we always underline this, trying to make sure that you have a problem-driven approach rather than the technology-driven approach. So, it's good to have so many government representatives here around the table. We all know about examples of policies that sometimes are more driven by the willingness to use a specific technology than the problem itself that it's trying to solve. So to give you an example, how many times we hear high-level political responsibles totally embracing issues of AI and saying that they want to work with AI in the public sector, but missing several times what is really the purpose or what is really the problem that they are trying to solve in this area. So again, more than going and having this kind of policy that wants to use technology because it's nice, because it's cool, because it's trendy. Let's focus on the problems and the problems that we want to solve here. So we in the World Bank we've been developing analytical work in this area. Let me give you, and having in mind this topic, let me give you a special highlight to this report on artificial intelligence in the public sector that we published previously. So it gives you not only our analytical framework in this area, but also deep dives on a more, let's say, implementation-driven approach. So how really to embrace these topics, how to make sure that that these policies can be effectively implemented, and giving different country examples on this. This report is free, is available online, so we'll share it in the chat very soon. And our presentation also based on this. We also know at this stage, because we've been talking about AI for some time, that the potential is huge, and that's not by accident, but that at social level, at economic level, there's this big willingness to move ahead and developing instruments that can leverage the potential of AI, namely in the public sector. And when we try to focus on this kind of examples and potential, there are issues like personalized service delivery experience. So how this kind of technology can make sure that when governments are delivering their services to citizens, they improve the experience of their citizens. Personalized services can be developed based on this. The usability and the interactions with citizens can also run in a much smoother way, and also benefits in terms of efficiency of back-end process, because this technology can in fact change and can be a game changer in this area. And there are several examples that also come up. So, for instance, the capacity of AI to leverage data and strengthen the policy compliance and aid in the identification of fraud. So we know about, and there are good examples out there that will show you about how to use AI with anti-corruption purposes, for instance, or others. But side by side with this opportunities are also different challenges. And the previous presentation from the OECD also highlighted this very well. There are questions of lack of leadership and awareness in the public sector. And leadership, we mean the institutional setting that needs to be in place. What is the strategy that is underway, but also sometimes, and we identify inadequate policies, legislation that needs to be updated, incentives for emerging technologies that need to be made available to the different stakeholders that want to develop this. Of course, if you want to use AI, data quality is fundamental, and the availability of data is fundamental. So don't just use AI because it's a requisite of your project. To do it, you need to have the proper data for using this kind of technology. And like it was underlined, the lack of digital talent and skills in the public sector is also a huge issue. It's not limited to AI. I think it's in terms of digital, generally speaking, but also understood as a critical domain here. And we've been discussing this in several other events here with the Astana Civil Service Hub. Let us know jump on some country examples that we've been observing here, and country examples from different regions, from countries that have different levels of digital development, and some examples that the World Bank has been participating and supporting governments in this area. So coming up with the example of Brazil, that developed an AI system that is able to identify red flags for potential fraud in public procurement. So building on the huge amount of data from the city of São Paulo, states of Rio de Janeiro and Mato Grosso, and also the Federal Ministry of Health, it was possible to develop a tool, an algorithm that could scratch the data and try to raise red flags when analyzing this data and when crossing the information, and doing the work that is much beyond sometimes the human capacity to do it. So this is a practical example about how it works. But other examples. So, for instance, in Nigeria, and we highlight this example in our report, when AI is used on a citizen engagement app that is called Data Crowd, and it's used to different purpose. So, for instance, when citizens try to report a problem that they identify in the public space, the app uses AI as an image classifier to better understand what is being showed there. AI is also used for geofencing on this, and even this kind of technology is used within the app in terms of what we call AI-powered opinion mining, meaning trying to understand and do some kind of sentiment analysis from the complaints or from the reports that are coming from the citizens, and go from there. So I gave you here two other examples, but let me now give the floor to my colleague Constantin RUSU that will deep dive on several other ones. So Constantin, over to you.
Thank you very much, João. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay, super. I want to thank colleagues from Astana Civil Service Hub for inviting us to present at this event and for organizing this event, and also glad to see many familiar faces that we saw on previous events organized by Astana Civil Service Hub. I will continue with some examples from globally and also from the region. So there is an example of Singapore where they have an application bot MD, which was developed during COVID times, that it acts as a Google for hospitals and clinical information for doctors and frontline health workers. So very good example, which actually afterwards was copied by other countries. Also, we have the example from United Kingdom with Do Not Pay, very interesting one, that helped users to dispute some parking tickets. So in 1 month after its post-launch, helped people to overturn more than 250,000 of parking tickets. And this proved to be a success of 34%, which is considered quite high. And now it is expanded to offer some ticketing disputes related to the air travel. Another example I want to highlight is from US, where General Service Administration implemented the tool for scanning bidding documents and determine regulatory compliance related to public procurements. Another example is from Canada, where AI for audit helped to maximize efficiency and minimize the cost for audit works. It analyzes the contracts and presents potential anomalies further human investigation. So these global examples are to inspire countries that are only starting this journey, and I also want to touch upon on some examples from the region, and I saw representatives of these countries that are present at this meeting. In Georgia, for example, in collaboration with the Revenue Service, the World Bank developed and piloted a tool to analyze some tax data and performing tax audit. Initially, it was piloted on a set of anonymized data and tried to identify some anomalies, and it proved to be actually it proved 63% accuracy rates on potential tax evaders that were identified during piloting stage. Now we are discussing with Georgia Revenue Service how to integrate this tool in broader tax administration and how to apply it when targeting tax audits. Another very good example, which is tagged also in the report that João presented earlier, is a tool applied in Armenia to detect tax evasions among businesses and individuals. So you know that usually reporting comes when a company reaches certain threshold of revenues, for example, and usually the companies would split themselves, or the owners will found another company, a parallel company, just to sorry, for some reason my video was disconnected. Yeah, just to see if there are founders are opening parallel companies just to distribute the income and to distribute the revenues so they can avoid this reporting. So just to identify this type of cases, an AI tool was developed and analyzes data on import and storage. And if they see that same company, like different companies are using same channels or same country of origin or same companies for import, and also use the same storage locations, that obviously treated as anomaly, which triggers tax audit. And by the way, implementing this tool, Armenia managed to reduce the number of audits by 2.5 times over the recent years, because now they can have more targeted audits implemented. Next example comes from Azerbaijan. It's not only about application, but it's about some other steps that they implemented. And as an artificial intelligence lab was created under the Ministry of Digital Development and Transportation, which is trying to accumulate the knowledge and which is trying to play with some innovations in the area of AI, and will probably become a leader in the public sector under the Ministry of Digital Development, that will start trying to set up some common rules for entire public sector. Also, I want to mention that in 2023, World Bank supported the Ministry of Digital Development and Transport of Azerbaijan to conduct so-called data governance assessment, which is crucial for further implementation of the AI tools. Currently, the ministry developed already a government data governance strategy, which undergoes public consultation, and it is planned to be approved by autumn. And in the next stage, Ministry of Digital Development and Transport is planning to develop an AI strategy for public sector to be approved this year by the government and parliament. They have also an interesting example implemented by one of our investment projects, which is focused of digital of the justice sector. There is a so-called smart courts project which implemented several digital solutions there, and in the next stage they are trying to implement some AI-based solutions. Of course, this required a lot of work as prerequisites for trying to test these AI solutions. They did an inventory of data collected, accuracy of data, institutional readiness for AI implementation, and they also discussed some potential 5 solutions in totals, out of which 2 were selected and it will be piloted by this project. One solution focuses on supporting judges and lawyers to try to improve their quality of decision making through so-called virtual judge assistants. And this solution is focused on commercial cases. And the second AI solution is focused on facilitating access to justice and judicial literacy. It aims to provide primary legal aid regardless of the person's physical location. It's, of course, an online-based tool, and try to take in consideration varying degrees of computer literacy across Azerbaijan, implementing some user-friendly features which comes to serve those users. So all of these examples in the regions, I am referring now to YEKA East specifically, and come to inspire other countries. And also when we support these activities in various countries, we come with a set of recommendations. Specifically, we try to focus on critical elements when it comes to AI governance, and it is much broader than the digital aspects. As João mentioned, has a lot of non-technological elements into it that needs to be addressed. So I will stop just on some of them. Of course, leadership, agency, and capacity within public sector to lead this transformation is crucial, because usually we see in these countries that AI comes to be implemented together with some projects which is broader GovTech reform, come to improve the services and come to improve data governance. And usually we see that there are some islands of excellences in specific ministries. However, this is a siloed approach. Everyone is doing its own responsibility and own risk. And we consider that it should be a leadership agency that needs or cross-sectorial bodies such as councils under the government that should coordinate and carefully administrate this effort, as it comes with huge risks, as it was outlined in Barbara's presentation. And I will stop also on some risks associated with AI. It should come with whole of government approach, again, to orchestrate it across the sectors and to have a more coordinated approach, because it requires, when we talk about AI, we talk about data and interoperability of data, a lot of data exchange. We also talk about infrastructure to support hosting this data and to support operating this data and to support this data exchange. We talk about algorithms and we talk about users. So these 4 elements, data, infrastructure, algorithm, and users, are applicable to any AI solutions, and therefore they require an orchestrated whole of government digital architecture in terms of infrastructure and in terms of data governance. It should come with AI strategy, policies, and standards that come to support these various initiatives that we see in different sectors. Interoperability and data exchange are crucial. Systems needs to be able to exchange data between themselves. Therefore, some data standards shall be in place. It's crucial to have engagement with private sector and academia, as it was again mentioned by Barbara in her presentation. This collaboration beyond the public sector is crucial, because most of the innovation are triggered by the private sector and academia. And also a government need to come with a sort of AI operational framework where they set specific methodological guidelines on how AI is initiated, AI tools are initiated and further operated. So it's very important to implement such operational frameworks, and usually they are structured around some steps to be taken when an AI solution it is implemented, which you can see on the right side of the presentation. Specifically, we are talking here about ideation. When we talk about problem statement, as João mentioned, this should be a problem-driven approach, not technology-driven, not private sector-driven or vendors-driven, let's say. It should be problem-driven. Then it comes conceptualizing stage, when various sectors are coordinating various discussions and try to come with a solution. We come to a proposal stage, after which it is triggered development of a prototype. Of course, that prototype needs to be tested, and only then, if it proves to be successful, it proved to mitigate some specific risk, it comes into broader development and deployment. So these are core elements that I wanted to focus on. Now I want to stop on some important elements that public sector should address when dealing with implementation of AI-based tools. It is acknowledged now that AI can actually harm if not properly managed, and failure to address some specific ethical considerations, as it was mentioned by Barbara, leads actually to public mistrust and leads to some drawbacks in implementation of AI because of these concerns. So usually these ethical concerns are structured around three main categories. We talk here about inequality. It can lead to loss of job, especially for the less qualified skills or jobs, and this needs to be properly addressed. Also, sometimes it can be bias in use of algorithms that AI is using. For example, there are evidences when there are some male biases versus female because of the authors of specific literature, or there are some racial discrimination bias, again, which needs to be taken in consideration as an ethical concern. The next one is about control. Sometimes these AI tools can be used by governments for excessive surveillance of the people, which sometimes can infringe persons' right or human rights, and also can use for misuse or of information or disinformation, which is also very, very dangerous. It can change opinions on conflicted matters. It can change political preferences, and some of these tools are already excessively used by some governments or groups of interest. Also, concentration of powers and wealth only in a few actors is also a danger, because usually big companies can afford playing with AI, can afford innovations related to AI tools, can afford concentrating big volumes of data and operating that big volumes of data, can afford big data centers. Therefore, sometimes these powerful tools have the risk to be concentrated in single hands and used by again by commercial or vested interests, and therefore we need specific principles to be embedded in development of AI that need to be taken in consideration when we talk about AI. One of them is privacy and data protection. Of course, any AI solution should respect individual rights to privacy and civil liberties. Individuals shall have control over their data, and the consent of individuals is necessary to use or redistribute their data. Recently, for example, in Azerbaijan, World Bank was initiating the support of so-called digital citizen consent, exactly tackling these issues and trying to organize government thinking on how to better address digital consent on using and reusing of personal data. Next principle is related to accountability. So it should be, AI solutions should come with some mechanisms that must ensure accountable behavior during life cycle of AI design and implementation. Some impact assessments framework should be done to identify accountability at every step and process when we try to develop AI solution. Safety and security is another principle. Cybersecurity is critical for any digital solutions, but for AI in special, because the AI solution should have predictable behavior, and leaders must ensure that well-being of society at large and private individual humans are protected and are secured for any misuse of AI. Next principle is about transparency and accountability. The algorithm, business cases, data collections, design of AI tools must be transparent to all stakeholders and potential users that will be, and those who will be impacted. Of course, open source data algorithms are coming to enhance transparency and should be widely used. Some reporting requirements related to transparency and rights of citizens to information about development of AI shall be treated with high importance and shall be treated with high respect by the government. Fairness, of course, as we said, it comes with a lot of concerns, ethical concerns. Therefore, AI solutions shall minimize at a great extent bias and identify and manage all risks that bring these inequalities. And inclusiveness should be ensured when designing and developing AI solution. Of course, AI should be human-centric or user-centric, and humans shall control the technology that comes to support implementation of AI solution. People should also review automated decision. AI solution come to support humans, but not to replace their decision. And the individuals should be allowed to opt out of an automated decision if so required or if there is such will. Professional responsibility, as we said, multi-stakeholder collaboration is crucial. Accuracy and scientific integrity of solutions shall be ensured by all the stakeholders involved in designing and development of AI solution. Promotion of human values, again, is one of the important value element, and we believe that all policies and standards that come to support implementation of AI solutions should be human-centric and should promote human values and benefit the society. So ensuring the compliance with this principle is very important, but at the same time would require a careful balance between the oversight as a role that public sector has to play, but also agility, which is crucial when we talk about innovative solutions, and we talk about piloting and about testing various solutions when we try to develop our prototypes and try to come with some innovative approaches. So our main recommendations are related to national when governments, and I want to reiterate this because I know that many governments from YECA and the governments that are present here are starting to develop their AI policies or national strategies. They need to consider the following elements, which usually are also found as main elements of many AI strategies, and you can check global AI strategy landscape when there is where there is analysis of what those strategies entail. So usually we see these main elements or blocks that are targeted by policies in various countries. First of all, of course, it should stimulate awareness and knowledge sharing within the country, but also internationally. And this event is one of the of this sort of knowledge sharing events among countries and among institutions. It should strengthen data management. As we said, data analytics and data governance is one of the core elements when we talk about AI, because no AI can be implemented without data. So each country as a precondition should cleanse their data, should implement strong data governance elements and strategies and try to regulate this as much as possible before trying to implement a AI solution at a more broader scale. Build internal capacity. Of course, it requires specific skill set of persons that are dealing with AI. So a public sector shall develop not only their digital skills, but also specifically focused on data analytics skills, development of algorithms, problem solutions, and the problem-driven solutions based on the advanced analytics, cross-checks, and various other tools. So this is crucial for the public sector. Of course, it has an element of learning by doing, because all of this is new for globally, but also for the countries, and especially for the public sector, when public sector comes to solve specific problems. So sometimes this innovative element brings this learning by doing approach. Sandboxes shall be used in terms of regulatory aspects, and a lot of prototyping shall be done before we implement it at a larger scale and before we roll out our solution. As we mentioned, ethical concerns should be properly addressed through various standards, requirements, and legal framework in place. And of course, funding and procurement is also crucial, because sometimes processing or building infrastructures of processing high volume of data is quite expensive, and it should come with adequate financing and specific procurement approaches, because sometimes innovative and agile approaches use it should use more agile procurement methods, and but also safeguarding the misuse of non-proper allocation of funds. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much, and we are open for any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, João, Constantin, for your presentation. Now let's move to the final part of the workshop, is discussion part. Dear participants, if you have now questions to our speakers, you can raise it now. Any questions or comments?
Maybe also if colleagues can share their particular experiences or challenges that they face, because it's very interesting for us as well, as we are also learning. And also I did not mention, like in addition to the analytical work that João mentioned, we have our innovation lab within the World Bank that is trying to implement some internal AI-based tools, but also is supporting some various innovations within the countries, developing the prototypes in collaboration with governments around the world. So we have our task force dedicated to AI, and at the same time we are learning. And if countries need our support, please reach out. We'll be very happy to help. But also we are interested to hear what experience you have and what challenges you are facing in your particular countries. Thank you.
We have questions from Dmitry. Please, Dmitry.
Greetings everyone from Georgia. Thank you so much for thanks to the organizers for this meeting. My question is very short, but I think very important. We are witnessing just these days that the Council of Europe has prepared the very first international instrument on AI, the Convention on Protecting Individuals, Human Rights, Democracy, while using the AI-based technologies. And I have two questions regarding this convention and its future effects that it may have worldwide, not only for the Council of Europe member states. The first question is the definition of the AI, and we know that the OECD has working on this specific topic, the definition of AI, for many years already, and it has been amended several times. As time goes by, the definition also is being amended. And at the same time, in the Convention on AI of Council of Europe Convention, we do have very generic definition of AI, where even very simple automatizations, very simple, and not very classically AI-based technologies also may be considered as AI technologies. And the first question is about the definition. So what's your idea about defining AI on the international level and on local level, on the state and country levels, and how important do you think that in terms of ensuring the interoperability and sharing the experience and everything, the countries should collaborate on unified definition of AI that should be used on the national legislation. And the second question is, how do you see the perspective of this convention and how it may affect World Bank initiatives, OECD initiatives, and many other initiatives worldwide, especially the risks that are existing nowadays, especially from the countries which do not have that high level of democracy. That's it. That's my question. That's two questions from my side. Thank you so much.
Who can answer the first question?
Barbara, I think this is more
Sure.
to your question.
Yeah, I mean, I will answer the question the way I understood it, and the importance of having definitions about AI. As you know, we are working on the use of AI within governments, and therefore our focus and perspective is not on the technology. So I'll try to answer your question from a public governance perspective, which is, I think having definitions, it's important for two reasons. It might be relevant when it comes to the regulations. I think there's a lot of conversation around regulations at the moment. And our initiative in the OECD, which is called BRIDGE, which stands for Better Regulations in the Digital Age, is applicable. I mean, it's also developing a framework which is applicable to key questions around regulating AI. And why having definition is important, because one of the key questions is around, do we regulate the technology? Do we regulate the use of the technology? Or do we regulate the actor and the specific tasks where the technology will be used? Therefore, considering that emphasis on regulations will grow, I think having definitions which are correctly presenting the different AI systems will be important to make sure that, because regulation, even if we keep saying that the regulations should not be focusing on the technology, at the end of the day, unfortunately, lawyers are not always embracing the understanding that probably all of us in this call have when thinking about regulating technology. Regulating any type of technological application. Therefore, having clear definitions, I think, can help. Having regulations which in case are focused on the technology, at least they focus on the specific technology and on the specific implications associated with the use of a specific technology within a specific public sector task or governance process that I was mentioning before, or function that I was mentioning before. So this is very important, because otherwise we end up having a plethora or a high number of regulations, and then the people who are supposed to apply the technology inside of the public sector will not have clear guidance on that, and will have limitations. Rather than having a regulation that supports an ethical use, we'll have a regulation that basically impedes or is not clearly identifying where the limits or the boundaries have been set. The second reason why it might be important to keep having definitions which are clear and which evolve, because the technology will evolve, is around the implications understood as risks as well. Because I think when we look at the public sector, and I think both myself and the colleagues from the World Bank we've touched upon the specific concerns, therefore potential risks and negative implications associated with the use of AI by public sector institutions. Well, those concerns are very different, or the potential implications or the potential risks are different in association with the different type of AI is being used or the different uses being used. So having definitions, I think, can also help guide, having definitions which are clear, which are accurate, and which are commonly used. It's helpful also to guide the users inside of the public sector and to enable them understand what are the potential risks associated with different technologies being used. So that's why I think it's very important to have clear definitions. And the second question, I think, was around the second part of the question was around interoperability, right? I think it was around interoperability, and I think interoperability is essential. I think all of us having worked on digital government have come to understand the importance of understanding interoperability, not only from a technical point of view, but also from a semantic point of view. For example, certainly you need data interoperability, which means you need to have the data governance in place. And I think all of us touched upon the relevance of having data governance to ensure that data can be used across different AI systems, and therefore interoperability of data to begin with, and interoperability of systems, especially systems used across the administration, is essential to also address one of the issues I mentioned, which is around scalability. So definitely my answer is positive in terms of prioritizing interoperability. You saw that in my slide. One of the points indicating the actions taken by government at the moment is around establishing the right infrastructure. Now, by infrastructure, we also refer to the elements that enable this interoperability that secures that the systems can be jointly used, reused, or shared across the administration. I don't think there was another part of the question, right? I think it was definitions and interoperability.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, interoperability also on the layer of legal layer.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, I think, some of the big concerns that are emerging when we talk in context, like even we're working a lot with the G20 as well. And I think interoperability of existing legal frameworks across regions, I think it's essential. I think there is a reason why I'm not working for the United Nations, but I think there is a reason why probably at the UN level as well, there has been this strong interest of having some positive impact on understanding the type of regulatory systems in terms of also standards and rules that need to be in place to ensure some consistency. Clearly, a EU directive has a very different set of implications for the EU member countries, because that becomes a hard legislation nationally. Broader instruments adopted by organizations like the OECD, but even more broadly in terms of coverage, the UN, clearly don't have the same legal force, but still they are essential to make sure that we have a common understanding when we talk about values that need to be embedded in the use of artificial intelligence. Then we may use a different terminology. We can say trustworthy, ethical, human-centered, but I think there is a common consensus around the globe on the type of values that we need to somehow secure, that are taken into consideration when AI is used by the public sector. And therefore, having interoperable legal frameworks is important to make sure that the risks are understood, tackled, or minimized in a consistent manner across the world.
If I could also add here 2 or 3 ideas, and thanks for the great question, Dimitri, on this. The question of the definition and the evolving definition, it's a very good catch. But if we think quite well, it's not really surprising, right? Having in mind that how technology is evolving by itself, this kind of evolvement of the definition also tries to follow this kind of path. But assuming this as having some kind of normality doesn't mean that a definition on itself is not important. By the contrary, we need to have this kind of definitions, and it's good that different international organizations are working on this. And in my view, it's also a clear example on how multilateralism is fundamental and it's critical here, meaning having organizations like the UN, like the World Bank, the OECD, UNESCO, the Council of Europe, like you mentioned, securing some kind of alignment on this is really super important, and we have good examples on the way on how this can happen. As we normally say, we also count with countries like Georgia and several others that are here on the table to push for it. Also responding to your question. The World Bank has done a huge effort also to securing coordination between the different organizations, being always quite open to coordinate with different stakeholders. And then the OECD is one of our partners, but we also partner with the European Commission, with the UN, etc. So hopefully, and I think things are evolving in this way, we will see more and more alignment on this. But please keep pushing. Over to you.
Thank you very much for the questions and for the answers. Let me read the questions from the chat. Are there any experience connected with the oversight of the other functions of the parliament in connections with AI?
So if you want, I can go on that. We are, I don't have a fully informative answer to your question, because we are currently working with, and we are in dialogue with some of the parliaments across OECD countries that are starting, or some of the OECD countries that are starting using AI also in terms of oversight within Parliament. So as I said, a high number of use cases is being in the context of using AI to increase the oversight capacity, both external and internal, not only the application in terms of procurement, for example, in terms of auditing, it's increasing in terms of use cases, but increasingly there's a consideration of using AI within parliaments as well. Again, the number of cases is not extremely high at the moment yet, and we are working with some of the parliaments across OECD countries, so probably we will have more information coming up, but this is certainly an area where parliaments are trying to experiment, like it is the justice system. So I think the different powers of the state are all trying to, clearly with the executive and the public sector being the area where AI is being used more. We have more cases, but the parliament is one of the institutions where more attention is being paid in increasing the use of AI. So the answer to your question is yes, there are more and more examples, but I cannot give you a full set of information yet on that because we are working on gathering the evidence at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your answer. And one more question from the chat. Could you please share what research work is currently being carried in the field of developing digital skills, particularly in the public sector?
Yes, so actually I was trying to find the links to two publications that we published at the OECD, so we'll post them. Either I send them to the Asana Civil Service Hub, and perhaps you can circulate via email so people don't lose the link. But there are two publications that can be accessed freely. One is a publication we produced a few years ago that is focused on talent and digital talent and skills across the public sector. That goes through the different, it's built on years of work with a number of countries across the OECD and provides a framework that understands or helps to understand the type of skills, the types of job categories, and the types of actions that need to be taken to create a culture that supports this evolution from a government to digital government. So really, what type of people we need to have around the table to make sure that data and technology are used not just to digitalize things that have been conceived in an analog age, but to really transform how the public sector functions and services are designed and delivered. So that's the first publication I'll share with you, with the framework, again, that you may apply in your administrations to try to understand how to map the skills needs and how to somehow address some of those gaps. And then there's a second publication that we produced more recently last year when we were working in particular with this institution in Italy that is providing social benefits, that was trying to increase its digital maturity. So the point was how to increase the digital talent and skills available across an institution that has more than 40,000 employees.
Hear you, Barbara?
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay. So the one that the first one I shared with you provides a general framework. The second one, which is a more recent, goes a bit more in depth, providing examples of concrete practices that have been put in place by OECD member countries to establish academia, for example, programs, or to adopt frameworks that have two purposes. On one side, to map the gaps in terms of digital talent and skills. What does it mean to understand, or how can you understand the specific needs in terms of bringing on board people who have the right profiles, but also some of the initiatives like, as I said, the academia, for example, for digital that have been established in some countries to make sure that those skills are either brought on board or the skills are developed across the public sector. So those are two pieces that I'm going to be sharing with you. I think those two pieces will help you try to concretely be able to understand the gaps, but also to see how other countries have across time try to understand those gaps, but also fill the gaps. I think there's a growing understanding that more and more the question around what kind of skills we need to have around the table needs to be linked to the objectives that the government is trying to achieve. For example, if the purpose is to improve the design and delivery of public services in the digital age, the understanding is, okay, what kind of skills I need in relation to the use of technology and data, technology including AI, but also what kind of skills I need to have around the table in terms of user-centered service design, for example, in terms of design thinking. So those two papers are aimed to help you understand the question or answer frame the question, understand the question and answer the question with this broad perspective, which is not only around the technical skills that need to be around the table. So I'll send them to Amanzol, and then Amanzol can share both of them with all of you.
Yeah, sure.
If I may also add, World Bank at the client support, at the country support, we are conducting sometime in collaboration with other donors, but sometime just using our resources, but in collaboration with governments, we are conducting comprehensive digital skills assessments, which then lead to development of specific digital skills programs, skills for jobs, or targeted on, let's say, primary education, secondary education, private sector type of skills, private sector, for public sector, different training programs for different target auditorium. So World Bank is providing this kind of support, and if countries that we are working with are interested, please reach out, and we'll say how we can organize support related to digital skills.
Thank you very much, Konstantin. I think Dmitry also has some additional questions.
Just one more. Thank you so much. And my apologies for taking too much time of yours, but I just want to use this opportunity to ask questions to these great people. The question I'm going to ask is very rarely discussed these days when we are discussing any topic related to AI. And when we are talking about the regulations and regulating AI, in most cases, our direction is towards protecting the human rights, protecting democracy, and reducing the risks, all the risks concerning legal risks and many other risks. But at the same time, when we're talking about the regulations, we may also think of a right regulating topic to support developing AI as a technology on the right track. And when you were presenting about when Mr. Christian was presenting about AI, we saw some use cases, right? So what are the good practices of using AI technologies in public sector, etc. So do you have any information AI aiming to support development of AI as a technology, but on the right track, not just to reduce the risks, but also to support, for example, the reducing the taxes or giving some benefits from the government, including the educational projects from governments or infrastructural projects from the government or any other cases that you may know about. Thank you.
Konstantin, you want to go first this time?
Well, we are not so much involved into regulatory aspects, and as I said, in the region we are only scratching the surface, let's say so. It's this dimension does not, in the countries that we are working with, does not come with solid, let's say, policy and regulatory support yet. And we hope to address this issue in the future. But I fully agree with you that sometimes regulatory aspects or approaches can be quite excessive. And as I said, all the safeguarding of application of AI shall come hands in hands with some agility, and agility also in terms of regulations and try to support the innovation aspect of AI. So I fully agree with you, Dmitry, that this kind of regulations in support of application, in support of innovation, shall come, but again, very carefully assuring all the safeguards, explaining all the steps and risks, and doing it only at the like pre-production stage, let's say at the development and the testing phase, but not when it's in production. That's how I see it. But as I said, we as World Bank, we are not at this stage, we are not so much involved in trying to regulate the AI at the country level. Thank you.
So on my side, listen, Dimitri, thank you for the question, and actually thank you for asking very interesting questions. That's why we are here. So no need to apologize on that. It's the contrary. I completely agree with you that any regulation should try to balance. I think it's the case for any technological development. Any regulation should try to balance the rights, the respect of values, and the possibility to keep innovating. I think that's a very, let's say, shared concern when it comes to regulating any type of technology. Now, in the case of AI, clearly this becomes even more relevant. I'm not aware of any specific regulation that actually targets this aspect, but in the EUI Act or also in the US regulation on AI, there are some aspects which target, in particular, the private sector when it comes to the development of artificial intelligence, with the intention of not limiting innovation, while at the same time ensuring that the safeguards are respected. So again, to my knowledge, and we pretty much know the regulations existing at the moment on AI, especially in terms of national legislations, there isn't one that is specifically targeting this, but the general ones acknowledge the need to keep the balance. And the second point on this is, it's not a regulation, but more and more there are funds which are available, provided by governments, to design, develop and design AI systems. And those funds have the purpose of not limiting the technological innovation and development while being provided if the developer respects the legislation, the existing legislation. Again, bearing in mind that the legislations in many cases are still at the very early stage of enforcement in many of the countries. And in the case of the European Union, I mean, countries are getting now into designing national legislations to enforce the EU directive. So I think this is an area that is really developing fast, the one of regulations, and there are going to be, and that's why those questions are essential. But again, this is to my knowledge at the moment.
Also, if I can add here, of course, we have this trend that regulations are much delayed comparing to the developments and the evolution in this area. Like we face also related to digital. Sometimes we have platforms developed and then waiting for 5 years to a law or to a regulation to be approved to support actual practical or full-fledged implementation of that platform. We saw many examples from the region, and I think regulatory aspects are much behind the developments that we have. And also there is no like uniform development. Each country, like what we see, it's very heterogeneous, and we have different countries as different maturity level. So I think the solution here is to look into those countries which are more advanced. There are some statistics of AI applications in the public sector, which I recently saw. I cannot remember now the source, but it shows like first it shows if the country, when the country approved AI related application, and also how much AI type of applications are used in the public sector. So I think countries which are in development shall look into those examples and see what type of regulations they have implemented if they did already. and look at those which are actually supporting the innovation and trying to reach a right balance between the safeguard and agility and the speed of enormous speed of these developments that we see across the globe.
Thank you very much for your answers. So, because we are run out of the time, I want to thank all the speakers and participants for your time and commitment to this event. And if you're interested to join to this initiative, Experience Sharing Alliance, what Mr. Alexan Baymenov mentioned in the beginning, please contact us. The contacts you can find in our website, Astana Civil Service Hub website. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone, and thank you for the
so
great
much.
questions. Have a nice weekend. Bye.
Bye bye. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.